Welcome to the Take the North podcast. I'm David Haugh from the Mully and Haugh Show on 670 The Score. Dan Wiederer from the Chicago Tribune up at Halas Hall, where there has been it's been a busy day introducing new Chicago Bears free agent signees, DeAndre Swift and Kevin Byard. I think both guys spoke. Dan, you were there. What was your first impression of the newest Bears?
Yeah, two guys coming from Philadelphia, two guys coming in presumably to become immediate starters for you, and two guys who clearly have a feeling like they're wanted here, and I think you heard that from both guys, particularly DeAndre Swift in the afternoon, and Kevin Byard. You talk about a guy who's going to come in and really bring the veteran experience that you lost with Eddie Jackson's departure. You could feel it immediately, when he got up on the dais that there is a presence to him, and you understand why he was so beloved during his time in Tennessee. Obviously a short stint in the second half of last season in Philadelphia. And if he can still play, the leadership piece is going to be something that's very valuable to this team.
We'll get into specifically what he had to say, as well as DeAndre Swift. We'll get to the latest in the quarterback situation in the market, or the lack thereof of a market for Justin Fields. And we'll talk about some other things, Dan. But I want to start first about overall, generally speaking, the tone of the reaction to free agency among Bears fans and maybe even media, because you do chuckle a little bit. But I think, and I said this morning on the Mully and Haugh Show on Thursday morning, it's been more strategic than it has been spectacular, and it has been very tactical almost. And you have examples of teams that will spend and spend and spend. And as we have said, you never really win anything when you win in March. But I think the Bears have gone about this in a real tactical way. And I think they're in the right way, because I also think it's easy to forget the two big ticket items were already here. Jalen Johnson and Montez Sweat.
That's it, David. And we mentioned that on our last episode, and I wrote about it again at chicagotribune.com. If we had sat here in the first week of free agency and Jalen Johnson and Montez Sweat had not been on the 2023 Bears roster, and yet you had landed the deals that the Bears gave to those guys, $98 million for Sweat, $76 for Jalen Johnson, both on 4-year deals. And you said we added a top shelf pass rusher and one of the best cornerbacks in the game. There'd be a parade going right past the Score Studios in downtown Chicago and into Millennium Park and over to the Petrillo Bandshell, and people would be really excited about what they're doing. And so this is part of what you're trying to do as a general manager, is just build a solid roster. It doesn't all have to come during the 1 week when everyone's got their eyes on the free agency flea market, as we've called it in the past. They've done some things. They extended Cole Kmet a year ago before the season began. And that's another guy that would have been a free agent in 2024 if they hadn't got that deal done. And so there's a lot of different ways to get your players secured and on your roster. I did not expect them to be rolling out a flurry of, top ticket items this week. You thought maybe with something on the defensive front. If there's one area where right now I'm feeling a little bit concerned, it's that they haven't made the strides up front with another pass rusher, perhaps a defensive tackle to strengthen that part of the ball, that you would like to see something come together. But we also forecast this a week ago and saying that Ryan's MO is to be disciplined and practical and to let that first wave crash and hit the shore and then recede. And then you look for some of the value signings that can help you build on guys that, didn't get what they thought they were going to get on the open market, and then come in on a prove it deal and try to make something of that. And so I don't know, anybody that's having outrage to the lack of action by the Bears this week just is striving for something that was never being strived for inside the building.
But you knew to expect it, because the guarantees about every free agent period is that there will be teams that overpay, and there will be fans and media who overreact one way or another. If they had spent like crazy, then you would have been dealing with people said, okay, where's the Super Bowl next year? And now that they're not, it's the other thing is like, well, I thought this offseason was going to be cool. It still will be very significant, because let's face it, when we get to May 1st, the end of the offseason, the beginning of starting to look toward what's next, the biggest deal that will happen, the biggest news will be drafting Caleb Williams, and nothing that you could do in free agency. Nothing. You could have signed Saquon Barkley. You could have gone out and traded for whatever wide receiver. You can still sign somebody else. Nothing will be more significant than the draft and taking Caleb Williams first overall.
No question. And well, listen, like you just also mentioned the receiving position, and that's something that you'd like to see them. It doesn't have to be a big splash, but you'd like a splash before free agency is over. That you have a guy that can come in and contribute. Because right now it's DJ Moore, and then you're kind of hoping for the draft, and you're hoping for a developmental breakthrough from Tyler Scott, and you're kind of hoping right now, and you want to stop hoping and start to feel a little bit more assured on that end of things. But to your point, like we need clarity on the quarterback situation, and when that clarity comes, all of a sudden you've got your top headline for the 2024 Bears is how they got from point A to point Z with the decision they made at quarterback. We sit here today on March 14th, assuming that they're not going to run across any roadblocks that prevent them to getting to the conclusion that Caleb Williams should be their pick at number one. That's where most of the league senses the momentum is going. But until it happens, you have to wait, and you have to wait, and you have to wait for this lack of clarity with what happens with Justin Fields, which hasn't gotten anywhere this week. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a convoluted way of saying, hey, just wait, and again, every year it's like a broken record. I say, let's get to that first week of May. We'll see what the roster looks like, and then we'll be able to have a much more enlightened conversation because we'll know the answers to a lot of the questions that are being guessed on right now.
Let's get into some of the specifics today on Thursday. The Bears, before we talk about what Swift and Byard spoke about, they signed another center. Dan, I was a little surprised that Rams free agent Coleman Shelton, a guy who started all 17 games for a pretty good football team in LA, now is a Chicago Bear. He comes to Chicago understanding Shane Waldron's offense. I think that's key. It makes you wonder about the Ryan Bates acquisition via trade for giving up a 5th-round draft pick. Maybe Ryan Bates is going to supplant one of the guards. Maybe Nate Davis's job isn't as safe as we think it is. I'm not quite sure how to interpret this one, Dan, but you have in Coleman Shelton a pretty reliable center who was graded out by PFF about middle of the pack in the league. So you can live with that if you have, other good pieces around him. What was your reaction to the Coleman Shelton signing?
With Ryan Bates, you have position versatility, and so that was obviously attractive. I still want to hear more from Ryan Poles on his vision for how he sees Ryan Bates starting the offseason program. Where is he going to be playing when you go out to your first set of practices at OTAs in May? Coleman Shelton made 30 starts the last 2 years for the Rams. You mentioned all 17 of them a year ago. And so you do have a guy that has familiarity in the system, as you mentioned. Is this going to be a competition? We'll see. I haven't seen the money that's attached to the Coleman Shelton deal. I do know that it's a 1-year deal, which typically puts you in a position to compete for a job. And it's not necessarily like this is yours and yours alone. So we'll see. We'll see where it goes. I think everybody wanted the Bears to make efforts to address the center position this offseason. Well, they've made 2 to this point, and they still have a draft ahead in 5 or 6 weeks, and we'll see where it goes from there.
You want to get starters in free agency, but you're right. The money will speak a little bit louder than maybe the move. And a 1-year deal doesn't speak to a lot of commitment, but you do have some experience, and that's always good at that position. You also have experience at the safety position, and that brings us to Kevin Byard, who I thought was very impressive at the podium on Thursday morning at Haugh, the first Bear to speak, I believe.
Yeah.
And just talked about his durability. And I felt like it was interesting when he referenced Mike Vrabel talking about the 100% guarantee of injury in the NFL, and he's been really durable. It doesn't matter if he gets traded, doesn't matter anything. He's played a lot of football, and I think he's going to be a guy that you can count on. And you can see, Dan, when you hear him, like on days like today, that leadership quality that is natural to him is going to go a long way in that secondary.
Yeah, and then like I said, it's a presence that you feel immediately, and so you understand that a guy like Jaquan Brisker, who's losing a close friend and a mentor in Eddie Jackson in the locker stall next to him, is going to probably quickly gravitate towards Kevin Byard, and those guys will click pretty quickly. Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon, Tyreek Stevenson. It's going to be a secondary that feels that presence that Kevin Byard brings. Now, look, like you have to hope that what you saw on tape from 2023 is a guy who can still play as he gets up in to that 30 range, and there was obviously some circumstances for Kevin Byard last year that it wasn't his best season by any regards. He gets traded from the Titans to the Eagles in midseason and is part of an Eagles team that just went downhill. You had the whole Matt Patricia experiment that blew up in their face, and it wasn't what everyone wanted it to be. And so Kevin Byard will be motivated to get back. But to your point, the availability, the dependability, the leadership, the professionalism, it's all there. It's like it's rock solid. And so I thought probably one of the most notable things we heard from Kevin Byard on Thursday was just talking about his consistent reliability and availability. And here was some of what he had to say about just his overall health.
First and foremost, I've been blessed. This game, Mike Bravy's always had this quote, he'd tell the team, like, it's 100% guaranteed injury rate. At some point you're going to get either injured, hurt, banged up, whatever it may be. But I've been blessed. I think I take body maintenance and just my career very seriously when it comes to off the field, recovery, nutrition, doing all those things. And I think that that's something that not necessarily that I can bring to the team or bring to the guys, but just watching me and how I take care of my body and things like that. They say availability is your best ability. And so that's been definitely one of my best abilities for sure.
David, this draws me back to last year when Mercedes Lewis came in during training camp, and you had a guy whose track record of taking care of himself was like something that you could impart upon some of the younger players, and the ability to be that sounding board and that resource for advice and direction is something that Kevin Byard will bring to the table. Now he's also got to be a playmaking safety on the back end to live up to the value of the contract. And I think he can do that, but I think you heard from him there, just the confidence that he's done things the right way and has had a little bit of luck along with that, and has been available, as you mentioned, hasn't missed a game in his career. And he told us, David, today, he's the only practices he's missed in his career is for the birth of his children. Haven't had a good chance to go through every injury report during his time in Tennessee and Philly to make sure that he never popped up on a Wednesday injury report with a sprained thumb or something. But that's pretty good. If you don't miss games and you don't miss practices, you're gonna fit in pretty nicely with a coaching staff. Really,
yeah. What you like about a guy like that is that he comes from two organizations, so much time with the Titans, and then traded to the Eagles. The Eagles wanted him. Those are two pretty tough organizations, and that's the kind of culture you want to create, and that's the kind of what the Bears are seeking. So Byard comes in, and even though he'll be the new guy on a defense that's pretty well established, I don't think that he'll be treated like the new guy, and I don't think it'll take very long at all before the guys who will miss Eddie Jackson's presence and his personality and his charisma, I don't think it'll be very long at all before they come to adapt and adjust, because the one thing that Kevin Byard will command, and that's respect. And so that goes a long way in that locker room.
Yeah,
the leadership quality. Yeah,
right.
Leadership quality.
And so he was kind of asked about the leadership and how he will do that now in another new home and a chance to be a leader for those guys. Here's some of that exchange from Thursday.
First thing I always try to do with any group of guys is first earn their respect. And I think one of the best ways you earn their respect is by showing up every single day, working extremely hard, studying in the classroom, practicing. I've never missed practice before in my career other than for the birth of my children. But, being available, being there, being a good resource. And I think once you earn their respect, you can kind of gain that, not leverage, but you kind of gain just that respect of the guys. So then you can actually vocally, you kind of have a little bit of clout with the guys, I would say. So that's the first thing I want to do, earn the respect of my teammates, my coaches, everybody in the building, to let guys know that how much I really care and how much this thing means to me. And I think that's just one of the few ways that you start off by being a leader, is by earning guys' respect.
Good stuff. I think he'll fit in quickly and well. And I do think it's an upgrade because he's a more physical, willing tackler than Eddie Jackson. We'll find out if he can recover sort of the ball hawking skills he referred to today and making those takeaways. But I think it was a good first impression by Kevin Byard. What do you think of DeAndre Swift and his first impression?
Yeah, nice to connect with DeAndre Swift for a few minutes on Thursday afternoon. Number one, he obviously has been in the NFC North before, 3 years to start his career in Detroit. Talked about just kind of the anxiety that came with the start of the free agency period earlier in the week. Said he was, alone on his couch, kind of stressing when the day began. And then he was able to get that call from his agent pretty quickly after the negotiation period opened. And it was very clear that the Bears were one of these teams that wanted him more than anyone else. And he said he just wanted to feel wanted. And part of the way you feel that is by what a team is willing to pay you, and then just kind of by how they express their vision for you coming in and playing for them. And so I think he's excited to kind of build on what was a career year in Philadelphia last year, understanding that he's going to have to take on Probably a differentiated role here in a different offense that Shane Waldron is running, but pretty excited to get going here. I think probably the most notable thing here, I believe he's part of the same agency as Justin Fields. He played college football at Georgia with Justin Fields. Even DeAndre Swift couldn't. He said Justin's my guy, but he couldn't tell you what the future holds for Justin Fields. And so this is part of the mystery that we're trying to unlock with anybody at this point.
Yeah, I mean it's a lot of people wondering the same thing. I mean, what happened to the market for Justin Fields? What happened to the attraction of all that ability that we saw? We'll get to that in a moment. But I wanted to ask a question about Swift, and I'm not sure. I don't know if it was addressed or not. I didn't hear the entire press conference, but I do think it's a question that kind of, when you're 25 years old and you're as gifted as DeAndre Swift is, coming off a 1,000-yard season, at some point you wonder, you're 25 years old, why are you on your third team? What is it, Dan, do you think that explains why DeAndre Swift is on his third team in basically 5 NFL seasons? And that doesn't really sound like a guy that people want to keep, or is that is he a victim of circumstance?
It's a valid question. I don't know that I have an answer for it, because when you look at sort of the replacement plans for DeAndre Swift in his last 2 stops, the Lions went out and got David Montgomery last year, and plugged him right into that offense. They obviously got Jahmyr Gibbs as well and retooled that entire position overall. And then the Eagles, on the same day that DeAndre Swift becomes a Bear, they go out and pay big money for Saquon Barkley. So it's not like they were saying, we can find a replacement running back at a value price in the draft, and we're just going to go that route. I'm not sure. I mean, he has versatility. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He can do a lot of different things for you. He certainly has the speed and the explosion, but it'd be certainly worth diving deeper with some folks in Detroit and Philly to get an understanding of why he's not in those organizations anymore. He talked a little bit on Thursday about being part of the initial climb that Dan Campbell and that group started in Detroit, and seeing kind of the work that was put in to get that going. But he obviously wasn't there to see it through last year when they came within a half of good football of reaching the Super Bowl. So valid question, one to do some more homework on as we go forward.
By the way, Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes signed contract extensions in Detroit, since you mentioned them, through 2027. They're not going to get any easier to beat or to climb past in Detroit. So that's the challenge for Ryan Poles and the Bears. Let's continue with the free agent class, Dan. Obviously, a lot of attention. We mentioned Justin Fields. He plays quarterback. Yes. So does Brett Rippon. What's Brett Rippon doing in Chicago? I know he spent time with Shane Waldron, but they were 25 days in Seattle. They couldn't have been that great. 25 days does not guarantee you a spot on Shane Waldron's depth chart the next time Shane Waldron gets a different job. Why is he here?
He went from the Rams to the Seahawks to the Jets.
Yeah,
in the span of 4 weeks. I think it was weeks 10 through 14 when all those things changed, and made one start last year. It wasn't a good one against the Packers and a lopsided loss. I don't know. The answer to your question is like one of those head scratchers. Nathan Peterman comes to terms on an agreement with the Saints on Thursday, and so that role is open in this building. That Shrugsville backup that can be a resource for the quarterbacks in the room, but is really not going to play much for you unless you need to throw a Hail Mary, right? That
makes me laugh. Exactly. He's down there to throw the Hail Mary, and he went down there because Andrew Janocko swore to the Saints front office that Nathan Peterman could throw the ball 70 yards on the fly.
I put out a tweet on Wednesday when the Brett Rippon signing was becoming official, just said the Bears are signing Brett Rippon to a 1-year deal. And that thing got like 260,000 impressions within the first 12 hours it was up. It was like, this is the landscape we're in right now.
No, it is. Because
Bears QB in a message, and people.
Well, it's not just that, Dan. You know this. It's because you tweeted it out. And because you tweeted it out, people took it as a swipe at Justin Fields, because you're reminding people there are other quarterbacks besides him on the depth chart. And you had to say, well, why do you have to rub it in our face? Brett Rippon signed with the Bears. Big deal.
Yeah, that certainly was a transactional tweet. It wasn't a swipe at anybody. But I'm trying to figure out what the vision is, because look, I'm not even saying this jokingly. We've talked so much about the quarterback position since the season ended. Where does this leave Tyson Bagent? Is he still in line to be QB2 here? You don't have any idea at this point what this entirely revised offensive staff thinks of Tyson Bagent, and like,
True.
do they want something different from that position? Do they feel like they need to get a backup there? But I don't know if Brett Rippon's your first choice to be a backup, to get you through a 4-game stretch of the season. If your starter gets hurt, that wouldn't feel real comfortable to me. And it would just, continue the saga and the chapter of quarterbacking confusion that we always have in this city. So I don't know. Again, like, I'm hopeful that when we're in Orlando, a little less than 2 weeks from now, and we have the opportunity to talk with Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus at length, that we have enough time to get to questions like this, because this is obviously low down the list of questions with all the things that's going on with the team, but you still would like to know, like, what is this?
Let's address then the elephant in the room, because it remains, as we sit here on Thursday afternoon, a fact that Justin Fields is a Bear. And all kinds of things are being discussed as the reasons why. All things are being discussed about what happens if they can't trade him. Let's start there. How conceivable is it to you, and I'm on the record here, and I will maintain this, it would be the worst idea that the Bears have had at the quarterback position in recent memory, and believe me, they've had some doozies, okay? This would be the worst idea to keep Justin Fields and draft Caleb Williams. That makes no sense to me. I'll debate anybody who wants to, but if that is still on the table, it needs to come off of it. How realistic of a chance do you think that is of happening?
By the way, friend of the podcast, Kyle Long, is an advocate of having both those guys in the same quarterback's room and letting them kind of coexist and trying to figure it out. And his reasoning in a video he filmed from his car and posted to social media earlier in the week was that you want to try to maximize the return on whatever you're getting once you get rid of Justin Fields. You and I are pushing back against it heavily. I am efforting to get Kyle on the show here, so that whether it's just me and him, or whether it's me, you, and him yelling at each other.
Am I not invited?
It's just whatever scheduling works out, right? In terms of how we're doing it.
Yeah.
But I would certainly like to have that conversation, because I think that there are layers to that conversation. Look, you've heard me reiterate several of them over time, with the idea that, number one, you are in an era where practice time is limited, training camp time is limited, on-field developmental time is limited. You're going to try to divvy that up between potentially a number 1 overall pick and then the guy that's the incumbent starter in a way that's healthy. You've got the locker room allegiances. Kyle pushed back on me and jokingly and lovingly when I said the noise, when I joined you and Mully on Wednesday morning, and said the noise would be untenable. It would be incomprehensible and untenable, because I just really do feel like it would create unnecessary chaos. And part of your job as the leader of a franchise like the Chicago Bears in a market like this is to try to limit the unnecessary chaos. And that would be just opening the door for unnecessary chaos to be in your building. And now there's the old school folks. I get in arguments upstairs here with Jeff Joniak on the regular about the old school approach of let them battle it out and we'll see how tough they are. If they're not tough enough to handle that, then they're not going to be. Well,
that's absurd.
I'm with you on that.
Let's bring Joniak on. All right.
There's different schools of thoughts on this. You and I are in the same school of thought and saying like let's just try to make the on-ramp to the highway for a rookie quarterback not littered with, bicycles zooming across and kids playing with balls that sprint in front of you. Let's just make the on-ramp to the highway a little smoother and easier to get on, and then see if you can give your quarterback a chance to develop into a standout. The start of this conversation starts with Justin Fields still being on the roster. It's worth reminding our audience that contractually he's with the Bears for the final year of his deal. The 5th-year option would have to be exercised by early May, and there's not a single general manager in the league that would exercise a 5th-year option of more than $25 million for a guy that no one knows for certain could be a starter in 2025. So that is a little bit of an inhibiting factor for teams that would also have to give up a draft pick to essentially bring in a guy on an 8-month rental, right? Is what it would turn out to be by the time you got things done, and try to get him up to speed there. There's a school of thought out there as well, and I'll stop after this part of the rant, that you just wait for another quarterback somewhere else to get hurt, and then some team is going to be desperate and trade you for Justin Fields. Well, if they're not coming to get Justin Fields during this part of the offseason, I don't know how many teams that have systems in place and have had an entire offseason with OTAs and minicamp and training camp to teach and run through that system with their quarterbacks are suddenly going to jump up on October 3rd and go, you know what, our quarterback got hurt. The only way that we're getting into the playoffs is if we go get Justin Fields, who clearly needs a tailored system to reach his best, because that's what everyone told us throughout 2023, 2022. And so I like waiting on that would be general manager malpractice. And so I hope that gets out of people's head as soon as possible.
The league is basically telling the Bears what a lot of people kind of feared about Justin Fields, is that they don't necessarily trust his ability to execute their offense. You have a lot of offensive coordinators around the league now that have similar styles. They're
out of the Shanahan McVay tree. Yeah.
Timing, processing, accuracy, in time, on time. This has nothing to do with Justin Fields' physical ability, really his leadership qualities, his mental toughness. All those things are A+. You want those things in your quarterback. What I think the reluctance in any team being willing to give up a draft pick, contractual problems, that's a great point. The draft compensation, everyone wants to hoard the draft pick. That's another one. But I do think it comes down to maybe this lack of confidence that Justin Fields isn't the guy to process or execute a scheme that these coaches have done so much, that they believe in it so much that they want their quarterbacks to be an extension of who they are and what their scheme is. And I just don't think people look at Justin Fields that way, fair or not, as a guy that can do that.
The Bears asking price is certainly a part of this equation, and it's an unknown variable right now, because I bring that up because the Atlanta Falcons just traded Desmond Ridder to Arizona, and the Arizona Cardinals were willing to trade for a backup to Kyler Murray, and they gave away Rondale Moore as the return.
Oh my gosh.
That leaves you scratching your head, and saying, like, what will Ryan accept upstairs here as a reasonable trade offer? Because it's hard for me to believe that Desmond Ridder is a guy that you would prioritize over Justin Fields, even though he's got more time on his contract.
Would you have taken Rondale Moore for Justin Fields?
I don't know what else is on the table. So that's why I say. That's why I say that the asking price is unknown. You're saying yes, 100%.
Yes. At this stage of the game, I would. You're not gonna play Justin Fields at quarterback. You're going to get a guy in Rondale Moore who's going to make your quarterback even better. You know how good Kirk Cousins is going to make Rondale Moore look, and vice versa? Goodness sakes. In that offense, I would have taken that deal.
Speaking of Kirk Cousins, so I've long been of the belief that everyone was saying, the Kirk Cousins domino was the domino that kept Justin Fields from being traded to Atlanta. I don't think the Atlanta Falcons were ever interested in Justin Fields. He's from Georgia. That was like the one thing that people got fixated on, and they needed a quarterback. And so it was like, from Georgia, need a quarterback, definite fit. Zach Robinson came in to run one of these McVay style offenses up there. Raheem Morris sat at his introductory press conference and talked about Matt Ryan and Matthew Stafford as the ideal models for what he wants to run in that offense. What did they go do? They prioritized Kirk Cousins and gave him a ton of money because he was the quarterback that fit the profile of what Raheem Morris laid out, that fits in Zach Robinson's offense in a way that makes perfect sense. Justin Fields is not a Matt Ryan, Matthew Stafford clone.
No. Bingo.
And so I just don't even think that was ever a possibility in Atlanta. And it was made out to be as such. And so then everybody gets all worked up about it not coming to fruition, but I don't ever think that was on the table.
Well, you kind of just supported the point that I was making, in that in Atlanta, those guys were used as the model for what you want your quarterback to be. In Minnesota, the ideal is maybe Kirk Cousins, and the Kirk Cousins light, or the Costco version of Kirk Cousins, Kirkland Cousins, is Sam Darnold, right? So you get guys who fit sort of profiles and prototypes. It's not fair. It's not fair to Justin Fields, but it is understandable, because you look at Joe Flacco going to the Colts. You think Shane Steichen is excited to get a quarterback who's going to be, he's starting one already, Anthony Richardson. Flacco gives that kind of security that he can execute that offense if necessary, if Anthony Richardson gets injured or gets erratic. So a lot of reasons why Justin Fields remains a Chicago Bear. It's a long off season. I don't think it's tenable for them to keep both quarterbacks, and I don't think ultimately they will.
I'm planting a seed for you. This is for next week because it's a discussion that requires time. Maybe
Okay.
it is one we fold in if we are able to get Kyle along. But my colleague Colleen Kane is not easily rattled, and she has been rattled like most of us have been by the discourse on social media about the Bears quarterback situation. And the other day, she said to me, she said, "When is this going to go away?" And I told her, "It's not. It's only going to get worse because of what's been created here during this period when the games are being played. Like, say Caleb Williams is here, right? And they draft the number 1 and he's your opening day starter. The 3 years of forgiveness that Justin Fields was given by a big chunk of the fan base is not going to exist for Caleb Williams. People are going to want him to be a star by Halloween. And if he's not, the people that were detractors of drafting him in the first place are going to be screaming their head off. They're going to be calling your morning talk show. They're going to be filling my mentions on X. They're going to be screaming their heads off that it was the wrong move and the Bears failed again. And it's going to get so loud that it's going to be ridiculous. And so I'm planting that seed because I think there is a conversation here about how insane this has already been and how much more insane it's going to be because of the dynamics that have been created in this conversation that seemingly only gets more fiery as every week passes.
Especially if he paints his nails.
He does?
Imagine that. I mean, what if he does that and then he throws an interception his nails are painted?
He's at the Players Championship. He's on TV today as a spectator in Jacksonville near where he trains at the Players Championship, and that's making waves.
How dare he have a personality and a life? So, all right, as we sit here getting ready to wrap up, Dan, the quarterback market, the backup quarterback market is still pretty lively. Sam Howell, no relation to Thurston, he's going to the Seahawks from the Commanders for a 4th and a 6th round pick. Wait, Washington gets a 3rd and a 5th, and the Seahawks get a 4th and a 6th, and Sam Howell? So they swap kind of draft positions, and they get a quarterback that has some potential, but eliminate one more team from the list of potential Justin Fields landing spots. The Seahawks are out.
Remind me, it's been a busy week. Who did the Commanders add to their quarterbacks room this week?
Was that did Brissett go there?
I thought Brissett went back to New England. I'm losing track of everything in a chaotic week. But clearly they're aligned to draft a quarterback at number 2 overall.
That's going to be Drake May. That's going to be Drake May's landing spot anyway.
Drake May will not reunite with Sam Howell to Tar Heels. They'll have to wait elsewhere. But I mean, all these moves that are being made here. If Justin Fields isn't moved at the end of this week with Sam Howell being traded and having a taker, and Desmond Ridder being traded and having a taker, there's deeper questions that need to be asked here at Haugh Hall about what the plan is and do they really feel comfortable about going forward with Justin Fields alone, with Justin Fields and a drafted quarterback. I mean, this is a situation, David, that just the outside world needs a resolution to, because the uncertainty is a lot. It's a lot.
Marcus Mariota is the quarterback in Washington, and he will be the presumed mentor for the drafted quarterback at number 2. Again, Mariota greater than Justin Fields according to availability and price. So look for the Eagles, look for the Ravens, look for a team like that to look at Justin Fields maybe and rescue the Bears from this predicament that they are in.
You threw the Colts out as well, right? In the little Chris Ballard intrigue, maybe?
I did that early in the week. That's before they signed Old Man Flacco. So Old Man Flacco's got to take that spot. So I don't really think that's valuable anymore. We'll continue to monitor. We'll continue to take your calls, emails, texts, and insults. And we'll gladly return them if you will.
Maybe we'll do an all insult version of the mailbag soon. That'd be fun.
That's like the all insult version is daily 5:30 to 10. Just check the text line. That's always fun. All right, Dan. So a lot going on. A lot more. If it happens, we'll check in and evaluate. And you can get us here on the free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcast. You can also watch us on 670 Scores YouTube page.
2 more things here on Friday. We're at least going to get Jonathan Owens, the husband of Simone Biles, and Gerald Everett. They'll be introduced at Haugh Hall. That'll be interesting. And I understand you had an interesting conversation that I've yet to listen to, but is on our podcast feed with Mike Lombardi, correct?
Definitely. You want to check out the Mike Lombardi interview Thursday morning. It's on our podcast feed. He was terrific with Mully and I, and he had a lot to say about the quarterback position. And he, obviously people know where Mike Lombardi is coming from. He's going to tell you the truth, and you're not going to like it necessarily, but he is a guy with experience. And so that is definitely worth checking out. Is Simone Biles going to be there on Friday? Any word of that, Dan?
I have no idea. She's probably training, right? But I don't know. Maybe we'll get a cameo and it'll be really exciting.
Well, the Blackhawks play Friday night. Will she be at the Hawks game? Could that be worth going to? Will she be introduced pregame on the ice? Yes? No?
I don't know.
Could she be at the Bulls game on Thursday night? There's all kinds of possibilities. Look, we're not used to this stuff. This isn't Kansas City. We're not used to having a player with a famous girlfriend.
Megastar. And there it is. By the way, I did like the way that you framed Mike Lombardi. He's going to tell you the truth, and you're not going to like it. That's a good little slogan there.
I've been in radio too long, Dan. I'm talking in promo speak. All right, so that wraps things up for another episode of the Take the North podcast. We covered a lot of ground today, and a lot more to happen as free agency continues, and we get toward Caleb Williams' private workout next Wednesday in Los Angeles.
Not private workout, pro day.
Pro day. Gee, see, I'm mixing up my terms now. Pro day next week in Los Angeles.
That won't be private at all. There will be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people at that one.
That will be famous as well. For Adam Studzinski and Dan Wiederer, I'm David Haugh. Thank you for listening to the Take the North podcast.
Great talk. See you out there.